Right. Okay. Right. Welcome to everyone, and I'm going to hand over to Terry, who's going to introduce the speaker. Over to you, Terry.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks. Well, as I say, this I think is one I certainly have been looking forward to with great hope and anticipation because it's certainly a brand new area and a new scope for drinkers. And also, given the background that beer was that sales of alcohol were banned, I believe, until the end of the 1980s in Iceland. It's a country of fire and ice, two ingredients which sometimes do go together with beer in the production of it. It's certainly got possibly some of the best water around, I would suspect, in the world in terms of cleanliness and purity, and has got some very interesting angles to beer production, beers, and the rest of it. So without further ado, I'm delighted that Beth is going to present this for us. As to echo what Brett said, if you have comments, could you please put them in the chat and I'll keep an eye on there and pick them up. We'll let Beth run through, leave it to go, and then we'll come back with questions towards the end of it. And it will be available later on as a PDF on the EBC YouTube area. So Beth, over to you and take us through the land of fire and ice and very good beer.
All right. Thank you very much, Terry, for that introduction. And yes, we'll be heading to Iceland. So thank you both, Brett and Terry. And thank you everyone for coming to hear about Icelandic beer. My name is Beth Manghi. I'm originally from the United States, from New Jersey. I've been here in Iceland for a total of 2 years. I say a total of 2 years because I lived here once before in 2001. I was over here playing proper football for a club in Reykjavik. So I've gotten to see the beer scene change throughout the 2000s, at least into where we are now. And back in 2001, I think really I could only find Sam Adams as the only craft beer that was available here in Iceland. And definitely when I left the States then, it was growing and gaining momentum. So it's really been nice as I've been traveling back and now moved here. I've been able to see, the flourishing of the breweries and many more coming online. So you're going to hear about Icelandic beer from an American with an Italian last name. So what a world we live in now. Let me get my screen shared here and get going with. All right. Let me get oriented just one moment. Okay, so now to know a little bit more about myself, I would also like to introduce you to Björnmenningarfélag Íslands, directly translated from Icelandic. That is the Beer Culture Association of Iceland. We are a group, I think now about 25 members or so, but we started in 2001 and had 10 founding members, and obviously we've grown a bit. We do have kind of a captive population of people, so we're only going to ever expand so much, but we do have we are trying to drive for more members these days. The focus of the group is really on promoting positive beer culture in Iceland and building a community for other beer enthusiasts. We kind of have aspirations to be able to have chapters of our club around the rest of Iceland. Our first general meeting was in 2022, which established our permanent board. I am on the board of the organization along with a few other members. And we joined the EBCU in 2022 as well, kind of later in the year, with support from Danska. So thank you very much, our fellow beer enthusiasts in Denmark for the assist and the aid and the support in that. We've definitely enjoyed joining the organization and what EBCU has to offer and the support that it can give us in promoting our beer. So we're very happy with that. So thank you again for letting us be a part of it. So now we'll move on to what's on tap for us today and learning about Icelandic beer. So we'll get some of the beer basics around Iceland, some other basics about being here, traveling here, just kind of how our kind of alcohol distribution systems work a little bit. We'll touch on the history of beer in Iceland. As Terry alluded, it is not a long and storied history necessarily. After that, we'll also talk about Icelandic beer geography, and if you're as you're traveling around the island, you can stop in various places. We'll talk about the different regions, and as I talk about the different regions, I will go into the kind of notable beers from particular breweries around there. And finally, at the end, if you have questions, we can take care of those questions, and like I said, hopefully get you some good answers. If not, I am more than happy to go and find some answers for you, and get back to you. All right, so starting with the beer basics here in Iceland, the traditional toast is scout. That's just, everyone just raises their glasses, and unlike some other European countries, direct eye contact is not required here in Iceland. It's actually preferred by most Icelanders. Nobody's going to curse anybody for not making eye contact. It is way too dark and cold throughout the winter to do that to each other. So, you're sitting at the table, someone yells out "Skål," we all raise our glass and have a good toast. The first craft brewery in Iceland came online in 2006. That's Brugsmiðjan Kaldi. They're up in the north of the country. Soon after them, a few other ones started coming online. The economic issues throughout 2008 into 2000, through 2010 did cause some issues with more coming online, but Brugsmiðjan Kaldi, as we call it, is pretty much the oldest craft brewery here. According to the Independent Craft Brewers of Iceland, there are 26 independent breweries, distilleries, and meaderies around in Iceland. And of those, 3 to 5 are traveling or contract breweries. Separate from our independent brewers, we have 2 large-scale industrial brewers. They are Odgren in Reykjavik. That is the largest and probably one of the oldest beer producers in Iceland. Dating back to the 19-teens is when they established themselves. They're also a drinks producer, so they produce soft drinks, sparkling water. So they produce a large line. They're actually the Pepsi distributor here in Iceland, but they make most often the typical lagers and the macro kind of beers in Iceland. The other large beer producer here in Iceland is Viking, and they are from up north in Akureyri. They have the contract for making Coca-Cola, so you do have these producers doing double duty as far as the variety of drinks that they produce. And each one of them have their own kind of craft beer brand or beer arm. I will touch on each of those as we go through it. So really, as been mentioned, there was a prohibition on beer, so that really has affected the brewing tradition in Iceland. There is no one particular beer style. There have been a few sort of unique brews made by Icelanders over the years, but really the modern day beer scene is definitely a melting pot of all sorts of different beer styles. As I said, the macro lagers are kind of pretty widespread due to just the availability in restaurants and bars. But as far as craft brewers go, IPAs dominate the scene a lot of the time. But a lot of the breweries have pretty diverse offerings when it comes to attempting other styles and pull them off quite well, especially when it comes to stouts. Other styles that are produced here are wild ales. We'll touch on those a little bit later too. There is a lot of experimentation and creativity in Icelandic brewing, where we will use there's a dairy product called skyr, which imparts a little bit of a tart and sourness that's made in, brewers have used skyr to create sour beers from that. We also have a variety of seasonal styles at Christmas, also at Fotoblot, which is a a food festival in January that is an homage to the traditional foods of what was eaten back in the day. So those include boiled sheephead, soured ram's testicles, other soured and salted meats. So some brewers try to get creative and either match the style of those food or try to figure out recipes that will actually complement those foods. So those are popular beers in the middle of January to try to figure out, hey, how did you match, an ale? What kind of ale do you match with ram's testicles? It's quite an interesting kind of feat to accomplish. But also throughout the rest of the year into the spring, we have summer beers, Easter beers that come out, and some summer and autumnal beers. I've seen for the first time here in Iceland, one of the breweries has come out with a pumpkin beer that was Geivingur, and it's actually quite good and matches up to what I've experienced back in the States. So we do have a lot of creativity. Icelanders like innovation, they like new things, they like to try different stuff. So it can be fun to drink here and at least give it a shot and try something different. So a few more of the beer basics once you actually come over here to start experiencing the beers. So Björnmenningarfélag Íslands offers a beerist membership. It's our tourist membership. So this is basically your Icelandic beer pass to give you access to the discounts that we enjoy as members of Björnmenningarfélag Íslands. And that is only 1,500 kroner, which is about 10 euros. And that gives you 2 weeks of access to what we are able to take advantage of here as members. You will find, as far as where you can find the beers, you'll find them pretty well spread out through just regular restaurants and typical bars. But you can purchase beer kind of to take home with you, or just to take back to whatever accommodation you're staying at. You can buy beer at the Vinbúðin, which is the directly translated is called the wine shop. It is the official state-run alcohol stores here in Iceland. There are various locations around, and the selection and availability of different beers kind of differs from each location. So there are some places that are larger facilities that may have a wider range of beers. There is one downtown, kind of in the center of all the tourist activity, that has a decent selection, but it is still kind of small. You can buy directly off premises from breweries, and that's a good way to do it and support them. Some of those breweries do not sell in Vinbúðin, so it's a better way to go out and be able to go and get some that you can't find at Vinbúðin. When you arrive at Keflavik Airport, there is a duty-free, a rather large one, where you can buy wine, spirits, and you can get beer there, but typically that is better for quantity versus quality. It's much more macro beers from Stella Artois. There's Goth, which is from Ulgaden, which is kind of the big kind of yellow fizzy lager that's served on pretty much every tap throughout Iceland. So like I said, it's a good option for wine and spirits. There are a few offerings from small and independent craft breweries, but they kind of come in sample packs. One kind of craft offering that you can get some of. They do have Einstock and Borg, but those are the ones that are associated with the larger Odgren and Viking. There's the craft beer arms kind of those breweries. So shops and grocery stores do sell lower strength beers. That is according to the law here in Iceland. Grocery stores can only sell 2.25 or less as far as percentage goes. Anything above that is purchased through Vinbúðin breweries or at duty free. So you will see lower strength versions of some beers, or even alcohol-free beers, which we do have an impressively large offering of non-alcoholic beers that can be as good as, and in some cases even better than, the original full strength versions. So you can find those just at your local grocery stores, at convenience stores. So those are widely available and can be a nice alternative to not having to have the full strength beers all the time. So just some other basics about getting around and either how to currency and purchasing beer and just food and traveling through here. Generally speaking, as I mentioned before, our currency is the Icelandic krona. The country is very card and electronic payment friendly. In some cases, people still do trade in cash, so that happens less often, especially in bars. You'll just tap and go for the most part. One thing definitely to note if you're visiting here with the intent of enjoying our beer, we want to make sure that you know that there is a zero tolerance for drink driving here in Iceland. It is taken very seriously. There are taxis and other ride shares available. There is no Uber and Lyft, but as I mentioned, we do have a pretty wide taxi system. The taxis are expensive. The hop ride share is slightly less expensive, but just please be responsible while you're imbibing, or it is Reykjavik itself is rather small, and usually the towns are small too, so you can walk just about anywhere here in about 20 minutes, and hopefully the weather won't be too bad. One other just kind of a heads up to know, and I have had to learn this the hard way, check hours before you go pretty much anywhere, especially to some of the establishments, the beer establishments, and even like cafes and other places to go get a beverage. Iceland has a lot of holidays, and sometimes breweries will close for those. So check social media, even give a call ahead to find out what their hours are, just to make sure. I made the mistake of thinking Merchants Weekend was a weekend where you can get some discounts, and nope, everything was pretty much shut. So I couldn't quite enjoy Merchants Weekend in the way that I thought I was going to. Let's see. So just some general travel basic tips, or some general travel basics. As I mentioned, taxis are expensive because this is an expensive country. There is a high cost of living. We are dealing with some high rates of inflation. So just as a heads up, just know that it's expensive, but you can do things to kind of offset those expenses, especially if you can find some place that's, if you're visiting Reykjavik, that is a pretty centrally located accommodation that you can walk to places from, that will help you save on having to either rent a car or use a taxi. We do have a bus system here in Reykjavik, and most towns do have some sort of public transport via bus. Although the bus here in Reykjavik can be a little bit hit or miss, but it is a good alternative to having to take a taxi. The high season here for tourism is June to August. It's really when we'll have the most daylight. The island itself and nature will be most accessible, and you will see a lot of cruise ships coming in. That is kind of the high season for that. For cruise ships, most of the tourists here, we've had a big influx of tourists again after the COVID lockdowns that we experienced. But if you are coming to enjoy the nature as well as the beer, which you can definitely do hand in hand, please come and enjoy it respectfully. Nature is taken very seriously. It is very dear to the Icelandic people, but it is also a fragile type of nature here too. Like we have moss that cannot be trampled on because it is too difficult to grow back. Some of it won't grow back. So we do try to take care when trying to enjoy nature. Increasingly during the winter, we're getting more tourists as well. People definitely want to come and see the aurora. They want to see the northern lights. But please take note too that weather changes quickly here. If the snow and ice can pile up quickly, and if you're not used to driving in those conditions, it can become difficult. Also, the wind just all year round can be pretty strong, and I've had to explain to tourists waiting in line for a car rental in front of me for a car hire that, yeah, they will warn you about opening your door because the wind will actually take the door off of the car if it's blowing really hard, or it will slam and hurt you that way too. So the island has several ways of killing you besides just the volcanoes that you've been hearing about as well. So it's a beautiful place to visit, but you do need to take care and visit it responsibly. So this is another travel note that I have definitely seen this happen. So know that most international arrivals happen at Keflavik International Airport, which is located about 45 minutes west of Reykjavik. And you are not flying into the domestic airport in Reykjavik, which services other small towns and city or localities around Iceland. If you do hire a car, if you rent a car, pay attention to where you're picking it up. I was standing next to somebody at the baggage claim at Keflavik, and I heard them say, "Oh wait, we're in the wrong place. It's the wrong airport. We need to figure out how to get into Reykjavik to go find our car." So there is a fly bus if you don't hire a car. This thing called the fly bus, which is a paid service to go back and forth to downtown Reykjavik and into Keflavik. But there are a few other ways to do it. Taxis are very expensive back to the airport as well. But generally speaking, there is, if it's not just the beer tourism that you're looking for, just general tourism, there is a lot of information available online just for general travel tips and ways to save money while you're visiting here, or just popular places to go to, all of the different types of tours and whatnot to see. But as you move around the island, there's definitely some beer to experience, and it's a beautiful country, and I enjoy living here and experiencing everything it has to offer. So now that we've been through some of the basics, we'll talk about beer history. So Iceland's first settlements, the early settlement days, were back in around the 9th century, and there is evidence that beer and mead were consumed in these early settlement days. But once we fast forward a little bit, with the advent of World War I, there was a prohibition that started in 1915. So with that, it was a total ban on all alcohol. But a curious thing happened in the 1920s. The Spanish decided that they would not continue buying Icelandic cod if Iceland did not start buying Spanish wine. So at that point in the 1920s, in order for the economy to kind of be maintained and sustained, Iceland decided to make an exception and allow wine. So wine was allowed in. The Spanish were pretty happy about that. So trade continued between the two countries. And then later, spirits, the ban on spirits was lifted in the 1930s. And then it took all the way until 1989 on March 1st for the beer prohibition to end. So finally, you could openly produce and produce and sell and consume beer. However, I have heard stories from bartenders here that back in the day during the prohibition, bartenders would take the lower strength beer, the 2.25% beer, and maybe add a little bit of either vodka or brennivin, which is kind of the schnapps here, and then hand that back to the customer, and then that was closer to their full strength beer. I don't think it tasted very good, so I'm glad that we finally have this prohibition, that the prohibition ended, and that is celebrated on March 1st every year. We call it Bjórdagurinn, and the independent craft brewers of Iceland the association holds their annual meeting on that day to celebrate the fact that we can finally have good beer here in Iceland. We don't have to just make some awful mixture of malt and vodka and try to pass that off as beer. So now that we've gone through some of the basics, some of the beer history, we'll start to get into the geography and start to kind of travel around the island. So we'll start here in Reykjavik in the capital region. That's typically what it's referred to as. There are a few localities within the Reykjavik kind of capital region, Kópavogur, Garðabær, Hafnarfjörður, Mosfellsbær, and Seltjarnarnes. So those are kind of just the localities that generally make up Reykjavik downtown proper and the kind of the Reykjavik suburbs. What you have in front of you here is a list of pretty much all of the working breweries that we have right now in Reykjavik. Geidinger Brugghus is located in Kópavogur, so the actual production facility is a little bit outside of Reykjavik, but they do have a tap room in the downtown area called Mikrobar. We tend to go there quite often. Olvisholt Brugghus is another one of the early craft brewers. They started in an old dairy barn, I believe out in Selfoss, which is a little bit to the east of Reykjavik, but they have since moved, they've just recently moved their facilities closer to downtown Reykjavik. We also have Ægir Brugghus, which I do believe has an association with Viking, but they are an independent brewer. They have a tap room right downtown. Orgeltin, that is, as I mentioned before, the large scale brewer here in Iceland. They're based in Reykjavik. Like I mentioned, they are mostly known for Gulf, and their craft brew arm, which is kind of encapsulated inside of, like literally inside the facility at Orgeltin Borg Brugghus, has a small space where they do all of their brewing. Borg actually does produce very nice craft beer. They have a very wide range of a lot of different styles, and they are known for numbering their beers. So they actually have a beer number 1, which is still produced today. It's called Brio. It's a Pilsner style, and it goes all the way up to well past 100, which is a stout called Surtur. So I would definitely recommend picking those up. That's one of the ones that that's a craft beer that is available at duty free that you can get a little bit of, but there is a pretty wide variety of those available in Vinbúðin, at most of the bars that carry the other Olgarin beers like Gull or Tulle or Bolle. Those are kind of the big macro lagers. They'll also have a few offerings from Borg on tap, maybe an IPA and Brio, the Pilsner. That one's a very popular one to have sitting next to Gulf. Next, kind of a little bit further out in the eastern part of Reykjavik, we have Malbik, which has been voted best brewery in Iceland by our membership 2 years in a row. We really enjoy Malbik's beer. They make their specialties really are their IPAs and their stouts. They make some very tasty pastry stouts, but also some good like American style hazy IPAs. They do dabble in lagers a little bit and just standard pale ales. And they've recently put out their own Kolsch style beer. That is definitely one to look out for and try and pick up. You can visit their tap room. It is a little bit further out, so you may have to either take a taxi or use the bus, or just be careful when you're driving back into town. It is walkable, but it just takes a little while. And actually, as you're walking from Malbik back into downtown, you would end up going by the next brewery, Reykjavik Brewfélag, which is Reykjavik Brewing Company. They are the 4th oldest brewery in Iceland and have recently moved into a new tap room and relaunched their flagship beers. Next brewery of note is Bryggen Brugghus down near the bottom. They have a pretty good line of in-house beers for their steakhouse restaurant that they run. They have a very enthusiastic Argentinian brewer. He's delightful to talk to. And they end up hosting several of our beer tastings and a lot of our meetings. We'll be able to get a bite to eat, sit and sample the beers, and then be able to enjoy some of their beers on tap as well. They really don't distribute. It's pretty much just all in-house consumption. Let's see, the last brewery of note around Reykjavik is Grug og Mak. If any of you were in Vienna back in March, Valberg and I brought a couple bottles of Grug og Mak to try. these are our wild ale producers. They collect yeast from all around Iceland. So you are, again, literally drinking, the wildness of Iceland. So they'll collect those yeast, culture them, and then develop into just very smooth, outstanding wild ales. They're getting a little more international recognition. I think they're a little bit more widely available in Denmark. They've recently just come out with a blueberry and a blackcurrant wild ales, so that were very nice. So touching on just the general craft bars, this is kind of the list of the majority of the bars in and around Reykjavik. We tend to frequent Skule, Session, Microbar, and Lemmy. And yes, it's that Lemmy that it's named after. This bar just recently opened up kind of what is probably the closest thing you can get to a beer garden in Iceland. It is an open air for most of the time, but they do have a little roof that they can put over, a tented roof that they put over the seating. And they have a 40 or 45 self-serve tap set up where you can go and get a flight of 4 beers, or you can go and pour your own mug of beer and try beers from different parts of Iceland on draft instead of just having them in cans. So we'll go through quickly some of the more notable beers in and around Reykjavik. I mentioned Borgbrugus. Surtur, that first one, is a very good stout. It's usually done as an imperial stout. There's several versions of this. These age really well, and several of our members have very large collections of vintage Surtur in their closets, in their cupboards back home. Ulfur is a very good IPA put out by Borg, and Gaurin, you see there, is another stout. As I mentioned, Krogamak, those are their two flagship wild ales that they have produced. Malmsbygg, I said that they are known for their stouts. The first two are coffee stouts. Litlabolla is the lower strength version. Doppa is a very good peanut butter stout. I was astounded by that. Kisi and Pardus are both IPAs produced by Malmsbygg, which are quite nice. Getting into Geiðingur Brukus, Björn med bubbles, bubblam. That literally means beer with bubbles. It's a nice light lager, very easy drinking, but still very, very tasty. Skýrgossi is a skyr sour. So this is one of the beers that was created using skyr. There is a blueberry version that I've heard is quite good. And Eldgossi is another sour beer offered by Geiðingur. The other breweries, Reykjavik Brewing, Slipper, and Hlemmer are very good IPAs put out by Reykjavik Brewing. So we'll move on and start heading slightly north, up from Reykjavik into the Westfjords. It's about a 5 to 6 hour drive. You're on some very windy roads, kind of following your way up and out of Reykjavik into the Westfjords. There really are only two up that way, Dokken and Galdur. Let's see, Dokken, as I mentioned, Lemmy, that's what the beer that you're seeing, you're seeing right now. Lemmy usually has a couple offerings from Dokken. One of the ones that I like the best is Dynjandi. That's an American style IPA. Fosfaten is a lager, but I believe that is a gluten-free lager, which is a nice one to see on offer. So continuing to move along, now that we've started to move further into the north, and I've tried to list these going from west to east. Probably really should have numbered them. So we have Björnseti Islands. They are in a place called Hollar. There's a rather remote beer festival that happens there. It's kind of sometimes you have to camp there, which can be kind of a fun experience, but the weather can sometimes take a turn. The two bigger cities in the north are Akureyri and Húsavík. Let's see. Brugsmiðjan Kaldi is located just north of Akureyri. Viking, again, I said is the larger brewer. And then below Viking in the list are two of the beer bars in Akureyri. So I'm just circling back to Viking. So Viking's kind of does put out a lot of, again, kind of typical lagers, but they do try to put out, they put out some kind of craft inspired beers. They have one called Bonte, which is a pretty decent session IPA. Actually, the non-alcoholic version of that I think is better than the full strength version. But Viking also has the Einstock line of beers that was developed and produced for the US and UK markets. So they are nice beers, and were originally, like I said, were meant to be sent overseas, but Icelanders kind of started to enjoy them as well. So there is an Einstock bar in Reykjavik, so you can get some of those beers on tap, and that's also widely available in the duty-free shops. So moving over to Húsavík, you have Húsavík Öl. That brewery produces, let's see, they produce quite a few different styles of beer. Every now and again, we'll be able to get them in Reykjavik at Lemmy. I believe they sell through Vinbúðin, but they do sell off premises. So kind of some of the notable beers up in the north. Brugsmiðjan Kaldi, like I said, that was the first official craft brewery online in 2006. I like their dark beer. Their dokkur means kind of dark, and their jólabjór, the Christmas beer. Those are very nice. Brugsmiðjan, so Kaldi decided, I think very pointedly, that they were what kind of beers they wanted to produce, and they ended up choosing a Czech brewer to write some of their original recipes that they started with and they still produce today. So their styles of beer tend to have more influence of Czech beers. Húsavík Öl, one of their lagers is called Jürgen, which I really enjoy because I'm also a Liverpool supporter, and Liverpool is quite popular here in Iceland. So that always felt like a nice ode to Jürgen Klopp. Kemur is a very nice American IPA. Rindil is one of the few milds that you'll actually find here around Reykjavik, Iceland. There's a couple other breweries in Reykjavik that do make their own milds. Reykjavik Brewing has one of the only actual cask, beer machines in Iceland. So continuing to move around the country into the eastern part, you have Austri Brughus, Auskur Tap Room. I believe those two collaborate quite often, and Auskur will have Austri on tap quite often. Beljanti Brughus is available in Vinbúðin. I've seen it there. And one of the most notable ones from Austri is Helðubreið. It's a headless lager. I've heard good things about it. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to try that one yet. I have done some traveling, but I haven't gone all the way around the island yet, but I look forward to getting out there myself. So now that we've been through the east, we'll start to make our way south. We go run through the Reykjanes Peninsula, which is all the way to the west, and then the southern region, which kind of traverses the country moving eastward. So you have Litla Brukhus in Reykjanes, but is like literally a small brew house. You also have Olverk in a town called Hvergerði, which has a lot of geothermal activity. So Olverk is actually geothermally powered. You can go and take a hike out to a geothermal river, go splash around in that little river for a little while, and then come back and have some geothermally made beer and pizza. They have a pizzeria, a little pizza shop associated with the brewery. However, you want to make sure you get there before 9 o'clock because they definitely slam the kitchen shut. a couple months ago, we were coming back from touring the South Coast and stopped there, and it was like 9:02, and we weren't able to get any pizza, so we had to go find some place to eat. In Creligeri, there's a couple other spots to eat, so there's definitely other food that you can find, even though things are kind of spread out all over the place. Also, and it's happening this weekend. They hold a beer festival every I think it's the first weekend in October of each year, and it's looking to be a pretty big bash with actual like music performer, live music. Several of our members will be going. It's held over a Friday and a Saturday, so you can either go Friday and Saturday. Beer festivals here in Iceland typically are over 2 days and have some particular hours. Is usually about a 4 to 5 hour window for trying beers, sampling beers, which you can do also at the Brothers Brewery in the Westman Islands in Vestmannaeyjar. So you see that little dot that's kind of out in the water by itself. There is an even smaller island off of this island that is, another lava rock that was formed by an eruption. And the Brothers Brewery in Vestmannaeyjar produces several very nice beers. They also hold an annual beer festival. I went to that one back in June. It was a delightful festival that actually kind of renewed my interest in going to them again after kind of being disillusioned in the States by just the sheer size of some of them. So it was a great time to actually meet the brewers, talk to them. It was actually the brewers behind the taps pouring the beers, and there were some breweries from other countries as well. So it was a great atmosphere and was just a lot of fun to experience it. And the Westman Islands are just absolutely beautiful. It's just an amazing setting to be in. So some of the beers of note coming from the south, Brothers Brewery has Easy Brother. That's an amber ale. I believe it's around 5.5% ABV. Oliver makes Reyðarhýður, and that is a red ale. Grænakver is a pistachio sour. So that was yet another kind of interesting, innovative sour beer that's been made. So it's definitely worth a try. Litla Brugghúsið makes a very nice lager called Birgith. It's pretty light, very easy drinking. And as well as Smíðin Brugghús out in Vík, they make a lager called Slip, which again is very refreshing. It's a nice little Pilsner style. So actually that brings us to the end of the presentation. I'm not sure if I filled the 30 minutes or I spoke too quickly or what, but if we have time if you all have, I think I just said y'all, that gives away that I used to live in Virginia. If you have any questions, we can go ahead and...
Beth, I think it's time for you to take a deep breath. You've done a fantastic,
and just before we get to that, so this is my contact information. I'm Beth at bjormenning.is, and we are Bjormenningarfélag Íslands. You can find us at bjormenning.is, and you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, find us on Facebook. And yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen if I can get my mouse to work.
Right, as I said, Beth, thank you for that. It's an extremely interesting and entertaining,
there we go,
very, very good run round Iceland. I had a couple of questions for you, and I've got a couple as well. First one is a comment about early on when you were talking around Reykjavik, I think. Lady Brewery was on the list, but you didn't hear any comments. If you could get any background on that, please. And then there's another one talking about the hardness, softness, and the cleanliness of Icelandic water. As I said, I think you can rightly claim to be some of the purest water around.
Yes, we do. Sorry, and I think my sound went off while I was presenting, so I don't think I heard if anybody tried to say anything. So Lady Brewery, yeah, it is on the list. I believe it is well, I know that it is a woman-owned and run brewery. They they have a few kind of tongue-in-cheek beer names, in addition to some marketing material as well. One of their I think original lager is called Basic Bitch. They have another pretty good IPA called First Lady. They're one of the ones that have kind of been sort of contract traveling breweries. They haven't really. I think they're still in the middle of establishing their brick and mortar. So sometimes their hours vary, but their beer is available in Vindboden and occasionally on tap. If you follow them on social media, they usually say where they are. Sometimes they do pop-ups. They do a lot of like concept marketing and creative design.
Okay, thank you for that, Beth. And as I say, the cleanliness of the Icelandic water was a question.
Yeah, Iceland has some of the most pure and clean water in all the world, especially in addition to air quality as well. As far as the hardness and softness, I do believe, to my knowledge, and again, if I'm incorrect about this, hopefully I can fix that. But to my knowledge, the water here is softer than most places. It is not very highly mineralized. It does funnel through all of that volcanic rock and bedrock, and a lot of it is also glacial runoff as well into our water supply. So we're mostly dependent, I believe, on mainly groundwater sources and glacial water. So yeah, it is very pure. I'd have to speak with some brewers about that, but I think it kind of gives more of like a blank slate for brewers to work with. There some of those minerals you don't have to take out. You can actually add them into your water if adding gypsum. It's not like we're Burton where you have a certain kind of water profile.
Yeah.
Or London or something like that. So I think that lends to some of the creativity and to kind of some of the other things that brewers have to work with here.
I've got a lovely one from you here now. Classic flavors in Iceland are rhubarb and licorice. I hope not at the same time. But do they ever find their way into beer recipes?
I think so. I wouldn't be surprised if someone's in the past that I just don't know about that has tried licorice. I think that there are some. I do know of we do have a homebrew association here called Fowlun, and at meetup back in August, one of the brewers, one of the homebrewers had an older kind of traditional recipe of a very malty, low strength beer that was, I think it was like 1.1%, but it did have like a slight licorice, more of an anise kind of flavor. And usually those flavors are rather popular to be put together at Christmas time. Icelanders absolutely love licorice. I am not one of those people who love licorice, but it's pretty popular to mix chocolate and licorice together, especially in candy. There's a liqueur, Thristur, that is licorice and chocolate. That is a beloved candy here.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks. Another one, actually, is slightly on something that was close to my heart, this one as well. Any archaeological sources or historic reviews about beer brewing in the early Viking days? That's slightly interesting because I actually was involved with Orkney Brewery, and they brewed on the Orkney Islands. They have a Neolithic strain of barley which they used to brew with, which they dated back. It produced a very, very weak beer, actually, but was a very, very different one. Anything like that in terms of archaeological records or historical records on the island?
I believe those have been at least captured either, I'd imagine, either through the sagas or other kind of archaeological findings. I can't point to anything in particular, but there is a settlement museum here that I think has some evidence from some of the longhouses. They did find that the remains of a longhouse here in downtown Reykjavik that is a museum now, which is definitely worth seeing. And I think there is some reference to it. I'm trying to think of what else. I think there's other kind of documentation as well.
Okay.
The climate here can be rather rough too, so I think it's difficult to grow the barley and everything that's needed. So I think centuries ago, I think the climate was a little bit more amenable to it, and things have just changed.
Yeah. A couple of other things, as Berners quoted that there was a licorice and raspberry beer a couple of years ago from Borg called Fever Dream. Possibly yes. The interestingly, one from Hans, cameraman, the trying to find stronger beers from Borg or other breweries, such as a barrel aged or anything like that.
Okay.
Any help for them at all from what you've experienced, please?
Yeah, Borg definitely does put out stronger some barrel aged lines and imperial stouts. The one that I mentioned, Sutter, and even Gaurun. Those are both, I think, some of them come out over 9 and 10%. There is a Vindboden shop that's well away from the city in the eastern part. It's in an area, it's in a place called Heidrun. They tend to have a bigger selection of beers, so you might be able to find it there. The other Vindboden in the mall called Kringlan in Reykjavik, that tends to have a better selection of beers as well. The Vindboden that's directly downtown, if you've been to Reykjavik, there's like the main shopping street. And it's actually across from the Drunk Rabbit, the Irish bar. It has a smaller selection of craft stuff, sometimes the boar stuff, but definitely try to seek out Malbig, either going to the brewery and going to the tap room. They have a pretty large selection available there. Session will usually carry some of Malbig's beer, but Skule Craft Bar, which I mentioned before, that's also in downtown Reykjavik. They pretty much carry Borg and Malbig on tap. Several of the beer bars also have tap takeovers too. But as far as finding Malbig's beers, they also usually will have cans in the refrigerator. You know, they have a can list, and you can find a lot of their kind of higher strength beers there too. It isn't just all 2.25 and less. There's definitely a lot stronger beer out there than that.
Last one, I think. Any homebrew competitions going on, or any plans?
Yeah,
that
that's a
you're
good
aware
question.
of?
Yeah, I think we're starting to have some conversations about that. Our board at Bjornmenningarfélag Icelands is, and I think we're starting to work a little bit more closely with Fallon, with the homebrewing club. So I think something like that would be a good thing for us to try. So yeah, we're definitely interested in doing something like that. Oh, Björn says that Icelandic water is so extremely clean, you can drink it straight from the tap. Please don't buy still water in the bottle. It just adds to the high cost of already visiting Iceland. It's very clean and soft. Yeah, it makes some. So yeah, she makes a good point. It makes it hard to kind of make traditional ales with it. But yeah, don't bother buying bottled water. Just bring something reusable. So
I think the last question now, I'm going to throw it in the last question. Beth, firstly, thank you for an excellent. How you've managed it without having to have a drink throughout this, I do not know. I can see a couple of faces on the top line, and I know they wouldn't have managed without a drink.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna crack one when I'm done with this. So.
From the point of view now of Iceland, what would you like if you could jump ahead 5 years? What would you like or hope to see?
Gosh, I would like to see home brewing over strengths of 2.25% be legal, because currently you're not supposed to brew something that's over 2.25%. I would like to see some additional beer styles. Some of my favorite ones are milds and kind of some of the British styles, so I would like to see more of those. There's a lot of hazies right now, so I would like to see a little more diversity in the beer styles, but just newer breweries coming online and some of the ones in the smaller the smaller parts of the smaller localities.
So, thanks, Beth. Thank you all. I think you need to take a deep breath and go and have a nice beer now, Beth. Thank you
I think
very,
I
very
will.
much for that. It's been an extremely good and enjoyable. The comments from people have really been good and appreciative of it. And to try and talk us round Iceland and what is a very, very new brewing scene,
Yeah.
as well and as efficiently as you've done. Thank you very, very much, Beth.
It
Thanks
was
a
a
lot.
pleasure. Yes, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Terry. Bye all.
Cheers. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody.